Do you want to read classics but feel intimidated? I have some recommendations for you. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about how to get started with the classics. So I picked a few books that are not very long and that are what I would call gateway books. What I mean by that is that they can help you discover an author or a style, and then it can lead you to discover more books by that author or more books with a similar style. Okay, the first book on the list is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. What's interesting about this book is that there's one magical element about it, but the rest of the story is real. So it's not like a fantasy novel where people have magical powers and creatures are flying around. Everything is ordinary and realistic except for this one magical element. So it's about a young man, Dorian Gray, who is getting his portrait painted. When the portrait is finished, he makes a wish out loud. He basically says he wishes he could stay young and that the portrait could age in his place. Then, by some strange miracle, he gets his wish. So the novel explores how having the power of youth will change Dorian's life. If you like character analysis and that you accept that Dorian, the main character, is not a nice person, then you will enjoy this novel. It will make you reflect on identity and time and appearances. The writing is beautiful and there are a lot of quotable passages. Let me read you this quote from chapter 1. The painter is talking about his painting of Dorian, and he says, "Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. The sitter is merely the accident, the occasion. It is not he who is revealed by the painter. It is rather the painter who, on the colored canvas, reveals himself. The reason I will not exhibit this picture is that I am afraid that I have shown in it the secret of my own soul." Isn't that beautiful? If you end up liking Dorian Gray, then you may like other classics that have one magical element in an otherwise ordinary setting. The one I would recommend next would be a French book called The Ass's Skin by Balzac. And then you may end up reading other novels that have a hint of mystery about them, like The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Okay, so the second book on our list is The Black Tulip by Alexandre Dumas. Now, Alexandre Dumas is famous for novels like Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, etc. However, the length of those novels and the complexity of the plot may be intimidating to some readers who are just getting started with the classics. In The Black Tulip, there's basically one main character who is working on growing different types of tulips. And the book is about how he ends up being accused of some crimes, and there is a villain who is jealous of his success. So the plot is pretty easy to follow. Reading this book is a good example of Dumas' writing because you will find his favorite themes like jealousy, conspiracy, and historical events. It's very plot-driven and fast-paced with cliffhangers at the end of each chapter. So I feel like it's a good book to gauge whether or not you will like his novels. I also really like the historical fiction aspect. When you read a textbook and they mention that there were some riots going on hundreds of years ago, it's a little bit abstract and dry, but when you see how the political events impact the characters in the book, it really makes these events come to life. Okay, the next book on our list is The Lady of the Camellias, which was actually written by Dumas' son. Now, this is a very different kind of book. It's the story of Marguerite, who is what you would call a kept woman. I actually made a video about the idea of the kept woman in different books. It's called A Woman's Fate. I will post it on my end screen if you're interested. So the protagonist falls in love with her and wants to be in a committed relationship with her, but society's rules won't allow it. In other words, the people around him seem to be saying, it's okay to use her, but you can't possibly love her. This book gives you a good idea of what society was like in France in the 19th century. It's fairly short and easy to read. I feel like once you've read this book, it can be your introduction to 19th century France, and you will probably be ready to read other French authors like Balzac or Zola. Okay, the next book on our list is Silas Marner by George Eliot. This is a short book that tells the story of an old man who adopts a baby and how the bond between them will change their lives. I think this book is a good gateway book to Victorian literature. It has that characteristic slow pace where you find out about the village first and then you get detailed descriptions of the characters and their backgrounds. George Eliot is one of my favorite writers because she has empathy for her own characters, which I really like. There are many books out there that leave you depressed, so I feel like Silas Marner is a special book because it actually makes you feel hopeful. If you like George Eliot's style, you will probably enjoy her other books. I would recommend Adam Bede and Middlemarch. If you like the long descriptions of the setting and you like exploring people's motives, then I think you would also like Thomas Hardy's books. Okay, our next book is actually a play. It's called The Seagull by Anton Chekhov. When it comes to Russian literature, I feel like it can be an acquired taste. The Russian books can be intimidating because there are many characters and they all have 3 names. This play is a short book, but it has a lot of the elements of a Russian novel. It has young people who are passionate in a reckless way. It has a young man who suffers from depression and is going through an existential crisis. The trigger warning for this book would be severe depression. If that's a sensitive topic for you, then be careful with this book. So the main character is a young woman who aspires to be an actress. And the first scene opens on a stage. So it's like a play within a play. And you're pulled into the family dynamics right away. I've actually seen this play in French when I lived in France. And the actress that played the main character was Juliette Binoche. It felt pretty surreal because I had seen her in movies before and then suddenly there she is on stage. Some plays are easier to understand as plays, but this is actually easy to read as a book too. So I think this is a good place to start if you're ready for Russian literature. If you like this one, then you can look into short stories by the same author, Anton Chekhov, and from there you can try short stories by Dostoevsky and kind of work your way up. The big books of Russian literature can be really long, so it's nice to start with something more manageable. Okay, our last book on today's list is Travels with Charley in Search of America by John Steinbeck. I really liked East of Eden by John Steinbeck when I read it in June, but it's a long book. So if you want to start with something shorter, then I would recommend this book. This is actually an autobiographical account of a road trip that Steinbeck took in 1960 with his dog Charley. The tone is very conversational, but you do find Steinbeck's signature curiosity about the way people live and what motivates them. I want to read you a quote from the beginning of the book when he is talking about people's reaction when he tells them he is going on a road trip across the country. I saw in their eyes something I was to see over and over in every part of the nation. A burning desire to go, to move, to get underway, any place, away from any here. They spoke quietly of how they wanted to go someday, to move about, free and unanchored, not toward something, but away from something. I saw this look and heard this yearning everywhere in every state I visited. Nearly every American hungers to move. I'm actually still reading this one. I added it to my September list at the last minute. If you like this one, then I would recommend you read East of Eden. I've also bought The Grapes of Wrath, and it's on my TBR, so stay tuned on that one. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Till next time, happy reading!